So welcome everybody. Delighted that you're here, and we could possibly do a teacher training this summer if there's enough interest. So if you're interested, now's the time to speak up or forever hold your peace. And a couple of things that I've found rather interesting and rewarding this past week. And I'm just looking for the page now. We had I received an email from a minister who posted a video from our YouTube channel on his website. And here's what he wrote. I have a background in electronics and other technical areas, which plays a role in my own ministry. But my own ministry is subject to my need for personal growth. So when a friend shared Dr. Bryce's video about setting a trap for God, my own growth was accelerated. So he wrote us an email to say thank you. And on his post on his website, he wrote, here's his introduction to the video that he posted. And I went back, actually I just finished listening to it. It's one that was done back in, let's see, when did we do that? 2017, I think. Any event, not particularly important when we did it, but you might want to check it out and give it a listen. It's actually one of the crispest videos that I've done on this idea of the physics of what people call prayer. And think has something to do with religion, and there's nothing about religion in the idea of prayer as it comes from the ancient Aramaic. And the video is entitled, let me get to it here. Things skip around when you change pages. There are a bunch of different videos, but the one in particular, 7 years ago. 27 minutes and 48 seconds. So it's entitled Living, Not Saying the Lord's Prayer. And it's a really concise picture that you might find interesting, but this minister introduced it. He actually copied it and put it on his website. Even as a minister, in the entirety of my life, I've struggled with the concept of love. In spite of the unloving nature that I have displayed toward others at times, I'm not a wolf in sheep's clothing. Many of us are. I'm just the opposite. Pardon me, as many of us are. I'm just the opposite. I've been a sheep my entire life, even when I wasn't aware, as an atheist or an agnostic. But the world taught me wrongful behavior, as it is with all of us, because the broken world produces broken people. That is because, since the flesh and blood version of Yeshua, there's been no other human available to teach us how to do everything exactly right. And therefore, the world and the enemy have applied a thick layer of fur, I thought it was an interesting idea, that never belonged to me. I work hard day by day in my walk as a Christian, moment by moment, to shed that layer and be a better person than I was the moment before. I've known for a long time that God is love. I'm well aware that if I want to live in his house when I leave this body, I have to learn to be a conduit for that love. But until I watched this video, I didn't fully understand how to get from point A to point B. I want to thank a friend of mine for sharing this video with me. I want to thank the Creator for bringing it to me at exactly the right time. And then he offers us a thank you. So I suggest that you pick up and give a listen to that video entitled Living, Not Saying the Lord's Prayer. And it's from 7 years ago. It was actually done at Unity in Wilmington. So nice.
And I'm putting a link
like that
in the notes.
In the notes, Sonny. Jeannie, that's such a shock that you've done that already. Anyway, it's a good video. I liked it. I enjoyed it. The way it was, it's kind of like when things, you're on track and things just come together just right. Well, that's just had all the components that make for a life-changing type presentation. And then an even more profound contact we got from someone. Jeannie and I were actually heading out to dinner the other night, and phone rang, answered it, and a fellow had been to Heartland about 20 years ago. We stayed in touch. We might talk every year or so, say hello and catch up. He's a man that's been in jail, had some challenges. And I had met, in some of our travels, I had met his dad, kind of made friends with his dad, had a few conversations with his dad on the phone. And he called us to say that his dad had been murdered. Actually, it was that his father had passed away, and let us know, and then that there's some evidence and suspicion that his father was actually murdered. And the reason for his call wasn't so much to tell us that his dad had passed. It wasn't if we were any great friends or anything, but to say that he actually had just the night before met with a man that they think committed the murder. And it was due to the work that he did. He actually spent a whole summer at Heartland back about 20 years ago. But the work that he had done then shored him up in a way that he could meet this man. And he said, if I hadn't had that work, I'd have been finding a way to get him out into the woods and cut him up into pieces. But he said I was able to meet with him and keep a vibration and energy of love going in me while he met this man. And they're doing some, research, I guess, and investigation to see if they find out what really happened. But, in terms of feedback, if somebody does the work, it doesn't get much better than a situation that could be really, devastating to everybody, especially if there hadn't been a murder take place, but could have been life-destroying for him, especially with the time that he'd spent some time in jail previously. Could have really been, pretty destructive. But instead, and he shared that he, started out with a rage when he heard that this might be someone that he knew, might be the person that murdered his father, and that he was able to come back to a centered space of connected love. And, my acknowledgement for him was that this is, a world-changing event. What he did energetically shifts the whole planet, energetically opens a space for those who think they have lots of reasons for rage, and he's pretty clear that rage has been one of his drugs, that he was able to work through that and really bring love present to a situation that was just horrendously painful for him. It showed him all kinds of different pain that he had inside himself. And there's a powerful line in the Course of Miracles that says, when you're healed, you are never healed alone. And that millions yet unborn will benefit from the work that each of us do. I came across a similar idea actually last week. I was doing some research, and I forget who it was, but some well-known teacher out of India. And he had prescribed a certain form of meditation. And his offering to his students, I'd watched a video somebody referred me to, but was that each person who would do this meditation would open the space, and I don't remember exactly what the numbers were, but would open the space for thousands of people to move into a more peaceful place in their lives. Energetically would create support for a shift in people around the world. And I believe that this young man was what he did this past week. Really created that kind of space on the planet. So we appreciate the opportunity to have a conversation with you. Excuse me, a little frog in my throat. And to really put forward these principles and invite you to share them, invite you to pass them on. If life and joy depend on truth, but the mind is filled with lies and frauds, how much joy can one have in their lives? For this young man, he recognized that his rage was not caused by what he suspected this other man had done, but was something in himself. And each time that one chooses to delete another lie from their mind, they move into a greater state of peace, and each one energetically that moves into a greater state of peace is support for others who are efforting and looking to do the same. Or perhaps even aren't efforting it, but are ready to go there. So when one becomes interested in truth and chooses to remove the disturbing mind energy, the thought disorders of hostility or fear that perhaps controlled their behavior to date, when one chooses to face those things, they open a space, and one person opens a space. Depending how deeply and how powerful they open it, opens a space for many, many, many others to do the same. Yeshua, the physicist, 2,000 years ago, spoke of that principle with these words when he said, "A little leavening leavens the whole loaf." Clearly, obviously, he wasn't talking about bread. He was talking about us as human beings. And that each one who brings the active presence of love to a mind that is pained and troubled, each one who chooses to collapse the mind's lies that their pain and trouble are caused by somebody else, each one who steps into knowing that they are a creator and consciously creates a space of love in their lives and in their worlds, in their interactions with others, opens the energy window just a little wider for everybody else that's ready to do the same, to go there. So I acknowledge him and thank him for the work he was willing to do around such a, what the world would consider to be a traumatizing event. And I just invite everybody in the audience to tap in. Of course, we're not going to use any names. We keep it private, but just energetically tap in, and energy will know who the support needs to go to. And of course, breathing into that space takes it deeper and deeper into physiology. The only error that exists are errors in perception. In truth, there is no absence of love anywhere. Only the awareness of love in the mind can be blocked. Those who block the light believe in darkness and believe there is a positive presence of darkness, which is totally and completely false. If you use the metaphor of a room that is totally and completely dark, there's a little device, you can push a button and the darkness is dissipated and replaced by light. But you notice nobody's ever created a flash dark, something where you push a button and it eradicates the light. Because darkness is an absence, it is not a presence. It cannot overtake light because light is the only presence. And so the same thing applies in the realm of what people call good and evil. An absence of love in the mind means people can buy into any kind of thought disorder and do any kind of crazy, insane, and bizarre behavior. But that doesn't mean that the darkness has any power. It's just those who have lost their connection to active present love function out of minds connected to thought disorders based in hostility or fear. So if there's a situation in your life in which you perceive the presence of love, then you can become the supply of that love. Just because people believe in things doesn't make them true. So those who have lost contact with the presence of love will play out thoughts based in what people call darkness. And they repeat the thoughts that they're identified with. So these are all errors in perception, and we know that 2,000 years ago, Yeshua brought a tool with which to completely and totally collapse perception. That literally, that whole world, what appears to be a self-standing, independent world, and we think it's out there because we say we saw it through our eyes. When you realize that the eyes see absolutely nothing, the eye is a one-way valve. Light energy comes in. Yes, it is fed to the brain. And according to what that light energy resonates in the brain, the content of the brain reflects this perception and becomes the world that people think they see outside of them. But that world never leaves the inside of them. Pain and discomfort comes from a blocked awareness of the presence of love in a mind. And it's time for us to wake up to who we are as the presence of love. And all you have to do, you don't have to believe anything I've said. All you have to do is apply the tool of forgiveness. Allow that perceptual mind that's based in what appears to be darkness to be collapsed a few times, and all of a sudden the crack opens for light to enter that mind. The natural state of every human being is absolute, pure, present love. It takes a lot of effort to try to control everything else and make it the way your mind wants it to be. That's all an act of unconsciousness. And it all happens within the mind. It all happens within perception. Any moment that we choose to tap into it, there is always a perfect presence of love. Have fallen into the decision-making mind, whatever it is the predominant resonant energy in the decision-making mind, the mind will tend to focus on and fixate on. Which means there's been a decision made to block what else is possible. When we're perpetually caught up in the ego's thought system, ego, edging God out, God being love, when we push love out of our minds, we can believe in all sorts of crazy things and then act out of them. And when we join with others who are acting out of the same crazy beliefs, we create craziness. But there's always that other way of looking. There's always the possibility of collapsing the perceptual constructs based in darkness, that is any form of hostility or fear. If you believe that it's out there, then of course you're powerless over it. But when you realize that the only thing that prohibits you from being in the light is your own unwillingness to connect to the light, in the world, it looks like there are places of dark and light. But that's an illusion. That's something self-created, illusion, illusion. In the Aramaic language, the word illusion means measured. Yes, if you measure darkness into your mind, if you measure hostility or fear into your mind, then your mind will generate perceptual constructs that make it look like that darkness is real. But the only way you can keep doing that is to not look at the light. The world of actuality is made of light. Even the physicists are telling us that. And so the objective is to get back to the truth of who we are, to stop living in perception, because in perception, and this, I've spent time struggling with this one. I woke up doing some still point breathing this morning. And as I breathed, a literal voice said, at your birth, you were not ready to come into this world. Literally, I was informed that that's where the fear started. For the last 6 days, I was in utero. My mother had toxemia, and they gave her Pitocin for 6 days to try to force me out of the womb. And in my breathing session today, there's been a progression. There's been deeper and deeper work happening for me, especially the last 2 or 3 years. But it literally was like, you were not ready. You're not willing to come into the world. And with that unwillingness came fear. And we've talked before about the impact of sympathetic dominance. I realized that from the beginning. That's where my physiology lived. That's where, I literally lived in an oxygen tent for months and months and months of my life. Lived on an inhalator and pills. And I realized that being in sympathetic dominance meant that higher brain functions were cut off, blood flow restriction to the parts of the structure that create health. It was actually kind of neat because I had an alarm set for a phone call appointment I had this morning. So I was kind of pulled out of that still point session prematurely. And as I began to move around to get ready for my call, I've got this extreme pulse in the back of my neck, right up just under the base of my cranial structure. So I'm in a little different space today. What that pulsing said to me was that there was an energy flow that was moving into my brain that has never been there in my life. Kind of excited to see where it goes from there. And realizing that from that first minute, it was fear. So interesting to see how things unfold. And to realize what we're really here for. Yeah, each and every one of us is here to literally be the physiological presence of active love in the world. And the only thing that inhibits that is 1,000 generations of unwillingness to function over that love, to stay shut down through fear. So it's going to be in kind of a quiet space today. And so if you're out there in listener land, if you're on one of those stations where we can't see you in our control panel, our call-in number is 563-999-3581. Call that number. You'll be listening to the show directly on your phone. And then if you push 1, that raises a hand in the control panel, and we'll be having a conversation. So, Ms. Jeannie, do we have anybody in the phone queue with a hand up or anything happening in the chat room?
It is all quiet. We have a lot of people, though, on the switchboard today. So if someone has a question, we've got 32 minutes. We've got plenty of time.
Lots of time for conversation. How can we support you? What's on your mind? 563-999-3581.
You got a hand up.
Push 1. Hey, let's say hello.
541, you're on the air. Is this Linda?
Of course.
Welcome,
and
young
how
lady.
you be today?
We're rocking.
Welcome to you. And you're rocking? Well, you're helping me rock. So thank you. What you've experienced today and what you've shared so far. I had one question to ask you, and that was that gentleman, the Indian gentleman that was offering the meditation, do you feel comfortable putting that link in on the show, or at least sending it to me? Because I'm I'm a lateral thinker, or whatever that means, and I'm very panoramic in my perceptions and in my path, and I've been building. I'm hoping to go to Vipassana this spring since COVID canceled.
Oh, nice.
For me, and I have a girlfriend who desperately wants me to go with her, and then I would also like to at least listen to this video that you listen to or watch, if that feels comfortable for you, to either send it to me or put it as a link.
It's certainly comfortable if I can find it. It was something that I just happened to run across. I don't know whether I saved it, but I'll look and see if I can find it.
If you can, if you don't mind sending it to me, and then because
Sure.
What I have found is that I've found the Aramaic gospel in every single thing I have seen, except witchcraft and that sort of thing, satanic worship, which I don't even touch, or magic. But in most spiritual paths, there's some relating point there that I can go, oh, I can have more compassion and openness and understanding for the way your culture has shaped this spiritual path for you, and it feels very comforting to be able to be multilingual in a spiritual sense.
I hear you loud and clear. I will look and see if I can find it, and if so, I will gladly send it to you, certainly.
Beautiful.
And you know, yeah. There's only one power in the universe that's operating. There's only one set of principles by which the universe operates. So even if you went and looked in this satanic stuff, it's all the same thing. Yeah. It's just whether you're doing it with mind energy based in love or mind energy based in hate and fear and rage and guilt and grief. And, you know, when you look at the original Aramaic word Satan, it means the resistor, one who misleads. And most people in the world are trapped into being misled into thought disorders and are members of the one world religion of blame. It's all everybody else's fault. And they have no idea that they're practicing Satanists.
Well,
that's most of the world.
That is so helpful, so expanding, so panoramic. Thank you very much. I love
and then the video that I started out with, you know, in the Aramaic language, the word prayer, the focal point of that video, it's living, not saying the Lord's Prayer. Yeah, the focal point of it is that the word prayer in Aramaic means to set a trap for God. It does not mean to put your order into the cosmic gift catalog. And to set a trap for God sounds kind of strange in our culture, but, you know, your TV antenna is a trap for channel 2. If it's oriented and aligned properly, you get a great picture and sound. If you're oriented and aligned properly toward the active presence of love, you get a great picture and sound. You get literally the active presence of love flowing through your structure. And if you orient towards something different, like thought disorders based in hostility or fear, then you get the opposite, and that's called satanic. Principle's the same. It's just kind of like,
right.
you know, that old song of, you know, who's your daddy?
Right.
Yeshua was talking to some of the Pharisees at one point, and he points out that their father, and in that case it wouldn't be their biological father, but the source of their thinking. He says, your father is a liar and the father of liars. There is no truth in him. One who's stuck in carbon-based memory is stuck in things from the past that present themselves as true in the present and therefore are a lie. And it's not until we can align ourselves properly to literally become a trap for, you know, our human physiology. My take is that our human physiology is literally designed as an antenna to capture and bring a focal point for literally for the energy of love and become a source that pours it into the world. That's what we're designed for. And when we reject our design, you know, we go in another direction, and the world gives us all kinds of false thoughts to chase so that we go off in another direction. Money, that's the God. Fear, that's the God. Power, all kinds of craziness. It's much more imminent than a Sunday morning story, is my point.
Oh, sweet. And it reminds me that I, as a receiver who is in the process of trying to align my antenna, have to be receptive and open and make the space within myself in order to create the trap for God in which I become free.
That's it exactly. You got it. Joining you in it.
At least in my head,
sure.
I'm looking to get it down to that CBM memory base, that data bank down there. When I get it down there, oh boy, wahoo! And it's ongoing.
That's prayer.
Okay. Thank you so much. So I'll look forward to that.
Gerhard.
I shall make the space for you, and so that you can find it if it's meant to be found. And thank you.
All right, blessings.
Blessings to both of you.
Hey, receive. Thank you. To play with her.
Oh,
2 days in a row this week. We had her all day yesterday. It was fun. That's why we didn't do a show yesterday. We had taken her on a day excursion. So
cool beans.
Yeah, it was. It's fun.
Okay.
All right, blessings.
Blessings. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Well, Miss Jeannie, do we have anybody else out there with a hand up or anything happening in the chat room?
No, we don't. Come on, somebody press 1. We got 24 minutes. Plenty of time.
You know, to the opening piece, and of course I've shared this on the radio show, but it's been a while since I've talked about it, but the opening piece of that video that we're talking about on living, not saying the Lord's Prayer, was there's a story that I used to tell quite often when I especially wanted to introduce the Aramaic to someone. And it's a story about, you know, let's imagine that we have somebody who wants to come to one of our workshops in, you know, XYZ city, and they only speak Russian, no English. And so knowing that you are the best translator of Russian to English, English into Russian in the world, that has to be one of your skills. So we ask you, would you be willing to pick this person up at the airport, house them for the week, and translate for them? And you're delighted to do that. And at the end of the week, we've hung out with this person who came in for the workshops. We've had fun with them. We've eaten, had dinner with them a couple of times. It's been a really, a sweet time. And so at the end of the week, as you're getting ready to take them back to the airport, I ask if you'd let them know that I want them to know what I think of them. So I ask you if you just let them know that I think they're really cool. Then you turn to them in your best Russian, and you tell them that Michael thinks they've got a low body temperature. And recognize that you translate my words perfectly. That's what cool means. But though you translated my words perfectly, you didn't say a word about what I meant, because I used an idiom. And so much of the Aramaic is an idiomatic language. And so when it comes to an idiom, it's not translatable. You've just got to know the meaning of the idiom. I don't care. You can have the best translators in the world and the best dictionaries written so precisely. But if you take and look up your idiom in a dictionary, take the dictionary definition of the word, i.e. cool, has to do with temperature, but you're using an idiom that has to do with a quality of being that I'm acknowledging, then your translation, I don't care if you look into 100 dictionaries and you explain to us correctly that every dictionary says cool has to do with temperature, so I must have been something to do with temperature. You're in an arena that isn't even related to what I'm talking about. And there is so much that churchianity talks about that the people who are talking about it had no clue that it was idiomatic. You know, that Lord's Prayers. It's a physics conversation about how to align yourself to become a space of receptivity for active present love that brings active present love into the world. It's got nothing to do with piety, got nothing to do with being down on your knees with your hands folded. And the Aramaic language is so rife with idioms that, well, certainly 100% of the hostility and fear-based conversation in churchianity has nothing to do with the original teachings. Nothing to do, even though they quote, "See, here are the words." It's nothing to do with it. It's idiomatic. When you tell somebody you think they're cool and you convey that it's about body temperature, you haven't said anything even relative to what's being spoken of, even though you took the dictionary definition and got it absolutely perfectly. You listen to the stated purpose of this man, Yeshua. He says, "I come to bring you life, life more abundantly." And yet we have people condemning others, ready to go off to war, ready to kill. There's so many crazy things they're ready to do. And they actually think they're doing it in the name of Yeshua, which in itself is another idiom. To pray in my name means to set a trap for God to become the space the way that I'm explaining for you to do it, how to do it. And so what we're here to do, and what our translators did with the Kaburis manuscript, was they spent thousands of hours establishing the first century meanings of Yeshua's words in context, and if they were idiomatic, to accurately understand the idioms so we could accurately understand what the direction was. So that's the purpose of our whole process here, is to make those things understandable from the point of view of physics, from physiology, psychology, genetics, quantum physics, energy systems theory. It all ties together. In the end analysis, there's only one thing to talk about, and it's this thing called life, which Yeshua said, "I'm coming to show you how to experience more of it." What is life? Best definition I've been able to come up to yet is that life is love flowing through a cell. That's human life. And anything that anybody does to inhibit that is destroying themselves. I remember back, it's actually in Lansing, Michigan, probably 27, 28 years ago, and there was a fellow there who was teaching my work at that time, and he invited me to go to a club meeting, a service club. I don't remember which one it was, Kiwanis or one of those. And there was a preacher there. This man had been a preacher for almost 50 years. And he got up and, he did the invocation and said things that just had nothing whatsoever to do with what Yeshua spoke about. And so I sat down to have a conversation with him and talked about the fact that, we were working with first century language of Yeshua as he spoke it, and that here were some of the meanings. Here's what he said. And this guy who'd ostensibly been representing Yeshua for 50 years as a preacher literally said to me, I don't care what he said. I don't care. The Greek meanings, and that's all I need. No, okay. Interesting. Interesting how we can get stuck in one of those dynamics. But in the meantime, are you out there with a listening ear that has a thought, a question, something to share with your experience of the work? Something that's on your mind that you'd like to have refined in terms of one of the tools, how the forgiveness process works. By the way, if you haven't been on the show for a while, there is a whole new reality management worksheet available. If you go to whyagain.org, and I'd have to actually defer to Jeannie to tell you exactly how to find it, but we've synthesized and created a new reality management worksheet that I think is one of the simplest and yet the most powerful worksheets we've done yet. We do have a link on YouTube where in the Hear My Voice book club, almost 2 weeks ago now, we walk somebody through that worksheet. So there's a custom set of instructions to walk you through the whole thing, and the worksheet is right there on the website. Jeannie, can you tell us exactly how to get to that worksheet?
Yes. The easiest way is just to put in, and I'm putting a link in the notes. The easiest way to get there is whyagain.org/wake up sheet, singular, wake up sheet. And that will take you to a page where you can get either the PDF format or a JPEG of 2 sheets. One is the latest 7-step, and then just scroll down a little bit, and there is the short 7-step. And I put the link to the YouTube from the Global Book Club where you all went over that on February the 9th. And I'll put a link to that as well in the notes for today.
Sweet. Awesome. So if you want a copy of the latest worksheet, there it is. And beyond that, if you're out there in listener land, raise a hand. Let's say hello. What's on your mind? How can we support you? What can we clarify for you?
You just had 2 hands go up at the exact same time.
Awesome. Let's go for it.
All right. First one, I think, is Michael Teddy, 770. You're on the air.
Hi, folks.
Welcome, good sir. How do you be?
Oh, wonderful. Thank you. How are you all doing?
Rocking. Doing well. Got a beautiful sunny day here. We spent the last 2 days, went and got 2 large trailer loads of semi-composted wood chips for our new indigenous garden. So we've got, Gene and I both shoveled like Trojans the other day to unload this trailer. We probably got about, probably about 5 tons. It'd be that much. That first trailer load we got, Jeannie, I think something like that. Anyway. Life is
good. That was awesome. The pictures were wonderful. That's a lot of work, but it's going to be beautiful.
Yeah, it is. I'm really excited about the way this new garden's coming together, and this new big huge pile of wood chips the guy had been composting for about a year, so there's a lot of breakdown already happening. And the new garden is on the side of a hill. The hill slopes in two directions, and so they set this right up the pinnacle of the hill. So as it rains on this pile, it'll just wash the nutrients right down into the new indigenous species garden, and we'll be rocking. We got the seeds and just waiting to get clear of frost to be able to plant.
Wow. It's going to be beautiful.
Yeah,
so, my friend, I thank you and Jeannie again for all your work and all the beautiful information. And I got questions. We're not going to get to cover them all today, and I'm amazed I had the opportunity to sneak away here, if you would, and get on the call. That's great. And I've been looking again at the Avicen, and it's just miraculous information. And many questions. I've listened to your videos again, and the waste buildup that you speak about, because I'm trying to remember my understanding, the precapillary sphincter is what closes, and that doesn't allow the nutrients to get to the cell. Is that correct?
Right. When people are in fear, one of the mechanisms of sympathetic dominance is when we go into fear, fight, flight, freeze, or fawning. The protective mechanism of the body is to shunt blood away from vulnerable parts where if we're injured, we could literally bleed to death. And as it shunts that blood away from those parts to the larger muscles where we can fight or run. It shunts blood away from the higher cortical functions of the brain, because we don't need to do a calculus problem. We need all the energy we can get to fight or run. And if that happens in a chronic way, then what tends to happen is, well, those capillary sphincters close down to inhibit blood flow into the capillary for protection's sake. And if that becomes chronic, then just like, the example I used in that video, just like if a tree falls across this stream that's been running for hundreds of years with this nice, cool, clean, beautiful water, and the tree falls across the stream and branches get caught in the tree and leaves and mud and gunk, we now have a swamp, and things grow in swamps that don't grow in nice, cool, clean, flowing rivers or creeks. Yeah. And so if one is chronically in that state where the blood flow is shut down, then there's going to be encrusted waste, just like in a swamp, in that tissue. And it's going to take time for an accelerated blood flow to start to break up the crusty congestion that tends to build. Just imagine, what are you going to do to get rid of the swamp? If the tree's been there for 10 years, you had your vacation place there and you enjoy that beautiful stream and fishing in it, and now it's just a messy swamp. It's the first time back in 10 years. What are you going to do? You're going to start cleaning out the gunk. There's going to be mud. There's going to be sludge to move. There's going to be bacteria and viruses. Man, some of that stuff, mud, is going to be so stinky because it doesn't belong there. It's supposed to be a flowing stream. And so that crust material is going to have to clean up wherever it is in the tissue structure in order for a proper flow. And then once a proper flow is established, then you're going to have the oxygen nutrition supplied to the cell where it's needed and the wastes removed where needed. And it's going to change the whole environment, like dramatically. Go back in the ancient, some of the older medical conversations, and you hear, the conversation of the difference between the germ theory of disease and the terrain theory. Yes. Are germs associated with disease? Yes. Do germs cause disease? No. But if the terrain is weakened, if there's congestion in the terrain, well, then just like the swamp, things are going to grow there. And if they grow there, then we'd call that, compared to a nice flowing stream, we'd call that swamp a disease. And so it is whether the swamp is in, the big toe or the liver, the lung, the heart, the brain, wherever it is. If there's a restriction of flow that's created a swamp, then there's going to be, there are going to be stinking things growing there that don't belong there. restore the flow, and restore the nutrient base, and the environment cleans up. The terrain is cleaned up.
So anything other than love causes this situation. Would
Correct.
that be
Tissue
close?
physiology is designed to be powered by the active presence of love. When we draw away from the active presence of love, and that would be parasympathetic balance. So all of the functions throughout the structure are being supplied. But when we move away from, disconnect from love and go into hostility or fear, that's when that shutdown of capillaries happen, which restricts flow, which restricts the removement of waste. Waste build up, and now you got a stench.
So that would lead me to believe, and I'll have you verify this, that if this situation is happening, that's going to cause slow lymph flow and eventually lead to things like varicose veins and along that nature?
It's going to tend to do exactly that. Yes. And,
so it's going to,
you know, where the wastes build up, there's going to be an enlargement. You know, you look at people, you know, you look at the young child and they're trim and slim and all of that, and then about, you know, 35 or 40 and 60, 80, what happens? People tend to balloon and grow, or tissue tends to become restricted. And when you can get the flow, I don't know if I've shared, did I? Yeah, I think I shared in that video about the intuitive hit I got about cleaning out cells. That was powerful for me. Yeah, are you tapping into what I'm talking about there? You remember in the video I talked about? Well, we one of the intensives we teach is intuitive development, where we teach people to perceive in ways other than our standard taste, touch, smell, hearing, and sight. You know, that we can gather energies from other sources and build understanding from that. There's actually a neat video on YouTube. If you do a search for blind cancer, let's see, what is, there's a kid who at 2 years of age had cancer in his eyes and had both his eyes removed, and he was blinded. And his mother taught him to make clicking sounds. And they show him in the video as a young teenager riding his bicycle through the streets and playing basketball and scoring baskets. He's totally blind. He goes for a walk with somebody, and he tells him, you know, there's a garbage can up there. So we're coming up to a garbage can over there on the right, and no, there's a car over there. It's like, how do you do that? He makes these clicking sounds, and his brain generates perception. He can see the world around him through the sounds he makes and through his ears. So that's an intensive we teach, is how to, you know, perceive things differently than our five senses give us. So I was doing an Avicen treatment back, several months, over a year ago now, and all of a sudden I get this visual, and I see this little guy with a hammer and a chisel going into my cells and just chiseling away at wastes. It's like, that's it. Okay. That's exactly what happens.
I remember you mentioning that now.
So if there's congestion, you know, in naturopathic medicine, the whole root of disease is congestion. If there's congestion and you can start to clean the congestion out, then once the tissue's restored with the nutrients it needs, with the oxygen it needs, and the blockage of flow, the wastes are removed, then the cell's going to rebuild itself. The body knows how to heal itself. It just needs what it needs to do it. And, you know, there's never been a body, let's say, for instance, you know, kind of tongue-in-cheek that I like to oftentimes offer is, you know, if you've got somebody with a headache, I guarantee you that body does not lack aspirin or ibuprofen.
Right. Yeah.
But there is something that it needs, and if it's given what it needs, it'll heal itself. Yes, the aspirin, the ibuprofen will take away the awareness of the fact that there's something out of order there, and the pain will disappear, but that doesn't mean there's been any healing occur. It's going to take restoring what the system needs and removing what blocks it in order for the system to heal, and it heals itself. There is no man that heals anybody. And the primary healer, the major healer, is restoration to the power supply that's needed for the cell, which is the active presence of love. We were meant to be a trap for God, as we started out the show with that video where, you know, the Lord's Prayer is about how to become the space that captures and brings love into the world.
Wow. That is so beautiful. So, when I looked into this a little deeper, Michael, over the weekend, I saw there was some speculation about I guess, the precapillary sphincter action in the brain. I don't know if I was reading those right, but my understanding now is that that was a past misconception, and that is happening in the brain. Is that a true understanding?
Tell me a little bit more about your question. I didn't quite catch it.
Yeah, if the precapillary sphincter action is happening in the brain. I saw some studies that said no, and some say it is. And if it is, I'm wondering is that related to how the brain, with the lymphatic system, gets rid of the waste of the brain while we sleep? Is that all related?
Right. Yes, it's all related,
Okay.
and the sleep that's needed. You know, there are glial cells in the brain, and in order for them to eliminate, you know, in order for brain cells to quite literally poop, these glial cells have to turn, and they only start to turn, they only have the energy to turn after 7 hours of sleep. So people who don't sleep well have difficulty detoxing their brains. And again, it's all got to do with energy flow.
Mm-hmm. So if we don't get those toxins out of the brain, I mean, there's many things related to that, even cognitive issues and so on, right?
Everything's related.
Yeah.
Yes. If it's supplied by blood and there's a restriction, there's going to be a problem. And my take would be that, you know, at least, you know, 90 to 95% of any kind of disorder or disease has to do with it's not getting the proper nutrient flow, and or there's a blockage of the energy that it needs. And the show is going to cut us off any minute. But go ahead if you have another thought, and we'll talk till it shuts down.
Yeah, I got several, but I'll work on getting on here again. And certainly a pleasure to speak with you again, and thanks for the info.
Okay. Well, when we're complete here, I've got to go out and do an errand. I'm going to be in the car for about the next 50 or so. If you've got the time, I'll give you a call back and see if we can finish, or if there are any other thoughts.
Okay. Sounds great.
I'll call you back in about 2 minutes. In the meantime, everybody, thank you for joining us. Create the best year yet of your eternal life. It's an awesome gift to give the world, and blessings. Bye-bye.